What's the deal, my people? Teflon in the building with another Game of Thrones Season 8 video. And in this video, we're going to talk about it. And that is the bittersweet ending for Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen. Now, when dealing with the ending for Game of Thrones, especially when you're talking about Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen, you have heard a lot of different things over the years. Whether you read it online, or you've seen people make videos about it, or you've listened to podcasts on all these theories about how it's going to end for these two characters. But I think when it comes down to it, all you have to focus on are two things. And these two things were said by George R. Martin himself. And that's all I think you really have to focus on, people. Number one, the ending will be bittersweet. Number two, you could look in the first book to find out what the ending for the main characters of Game of Thrones will be. And I think if you just look at those two things, we can then figure out how it's going to end for Daenerys Targaryen and Jon Snow. Now, I think when people look at the bittersweet ending, I think people focus too much on the bitter and not sweet. So when we mean bittersweet ending, what do we really mean? That means people are going to get some things that they want, but they won't get everything that they wanted, right? That's what makes it bittersweet. So I think if we look at what these two characters want and figure out what we think they're going to get, we can then see the bittersweet ending for both of them. So we got to look at what drives both characters. What's the number one thing that drives Daenerys Targaryen? And that to me is getting the Iron Throne. What's the number one thing that drives Jon Snow? That to me is defeating the White Walkers. So in order for this to be bittersweet, they can't get both of these things, or that would just be too sweet, right? There would be no bitter in that biatch, right? And that's what we're looking for, a little bit of bitter. If they both got what they wanted, there'd be no bitter in it. So one of them can't get what they want in that situation. So who's it going to be? Is Daenerys not going to get the throne, or is Jon Snow not going to defeat the White Walkers? When I look at it like that, in plain black and white, it seems to me that most likely is going to be Daenerys that doesn't get what she wants in that situation, which is the Iron Throne. Because I think that we have to have the defeat of the White Walkers, right? They have to be defeated. So now we have to look at secondary wants that they have. And this is something that they both have in common. And that is they both want to be parents. They both want to have kids.
So why exactly did you not make love to Ros with the perfect...
What's my name?
Jon Snow?
And why is my surname Snow?
Because you're a bastard from the north.
Because all I could think was, what if I got her pregnant? If she had a child? Another bastard named Snow.
So Jon wants to have a baby, but he's afraid to because he doesn't want it to be another bastard, another Snow from the north. And Daenerys wants to have a baby, but she's afraid that she can't have babies. And it just so happens that it's Jon Snow that points out that maybe she still can have babies.
I can't have children.
Who told you that?
The witch who murdered my husband.
Has it occurred to you she might not have been a reliable source of information?
Now, in order to make both of their dreams come true, and that all we need is a wedding, and then they have a child together, right? So that brings us to another, which is probably the most important want that they both want, and that is to live. Now, they both can't live because we gotta have some bitter up in that biatch, right? That's the only way this truly works, because that's what George R. Martin says. It has to be bittersweet. So we know that it looks like Daenerys will not get the throne. Jon Snow will defeat the White Walkers. They will have a child together. That will be their sweet. And now we have to have some bitter, and that means both of them cannot live. One of them has to die. But who is that going to be? Now that brings me to the second point that I said, and that is that George R. R. Martin said that the ending can be found in book number 1. And I think if we look at the dragon dreams from Daenerys, chapter 2, Game of Thrones, we can see the ending that's going to happen for both of them. Viserys was hitting her, hurting her. She was naked, clumsy with fear. She ran from him, but her body seemed thick and ungainly. He struck her again. She stumbled and fell. You woke the dragon, he screamed as he kicked her. You woke the dragon. You woke the dragon. Her thighs were slick with blood. She closed her eyes and whimpered. As if in answer, there was a hideous rippling sound and the crackling of some great fire. When she looked again, Viserys was gone. Great columns of flame rose around, and in the midst of them was the dragon. It turned its great head slowly. When its molten eyes found hers, she woke shaking and covered with a fine sheen of sweat. She had never been so afraid. Yet when she slept that night, she dreamt the dragon dream again. Viserys was not in it this time. There was only her and the dragon. Its scales were black as night, wet and slick with blood. Her blood, Dany sensed. Its eyes were a pool of molten magma, and when it opened its mouth, the flame came roaring out in a hot jet. She could hear it sing to her. She opened her arms to the fire, embraced it, let it swallow her whole, and it cleansed her, and tempered her, and scorned her clean. She could feel her flesh sear, and blacken, and slough away, could feel her blood boil, and turn to steam, and yet there was no pain. She felt strong, and new, and fierce. And I believe that from that we can see the ending for Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen. So let me explain. It appears to be a dream with Daenerys, her brother, and a dragon, but it's not. It's a dream of her brother, and Jon Snow, the dragon. When we first see the dragon brought up, it's brought up in reference to her brother, and then we see the dragon brought up again. But because of the flames and everything, you're thinking it's a dragon, but it doesn't say a dragon or her dragon. It says the dragon, the same way it said for her brother. So this is a person that it's talking about. And in the first scene, we see that she's overweight. She has blood on her legs. This is Daenerys pregnant. So we see that Daenerys is pregnant at this time when she's with the dragon. And the dragon is Jon Snow. And at this particular time, Jon Snow just stabbed Daenerys Targaryen to forge Lightbringer, making Jon Snow Azor Ahai reborn, and Daenerys Targaryen playing the role of Nissa. But who is Nissa? Nissa was the loving wife of Azor Ahai, and when he asked her to come into his room and she bared her breast, he stabbed her with a sword, sacrificing his wife, the love of his life, in order to make the Red Sword of Heroes Lightbringer, in order to save the world. And that is exactly what is going on right here. But if that was the case, we would have to have some foreshadowing of Daenerys Targaryen being stabbed in the heart. So here are the foreshadowings from the show of Daenerys Targaryen being stabbed in the heart.
All those things you don't believe in, he faced those things. He fought those things for the good of his people. He risked his life for his people. He took a knife in the heart for his people. He gave his own...
What was that Sir Davos said about taking a knife in the heart for his people? Did you notice that?
You must allow them the flights of fancy. It's dreary in the north.
What do you think of her?
Who?
I believe you know of whom I speak.
I think she has a good heart.
A good heart? I've noticed you staring at a good heart.
Now, I just recently did a video on Melisandre and why she can't be Nissa Nissa, or why any other person besides Daenerys Targaryen cannot be Nissa Nissa. Number one, Nissa Nissa has to be Azor Ahai's wife, and the only one set up to do that is Daenerys Targaryen. And this is a sacrifice, and a sacrifice means to give up something that you want. It has to be something he cares about. If he has to kill his wife, it has to be something he cares about. If he stabbed Melisandre, nobody cares. Anyone will step up to place to do that. Sir Davos will do that. Arya will do that. It's not sacrificing anything to kill Melisandre or anybody else to Azor Ahai. It's his sacrifice. And his thing that he loves the most, the real Azor Ahai, was his wife. And he had to sacrifice her in order to make this sword, in order to defeat the White Walkers. And Jon Snow has to do the exact same thing. He has to sacrifice his wife, Daenerys Targaryen, and quite possibly their child, in order to forge Lightbringer and stop the White Walkers. That's what's going to be the final bittersweet ending for the both of them. Now, in the first dream, when she runs away from her brother, it says she was naked, clumsy with fear, but she ran from him, but her body seemed thick and ungainly. That's her being pregnant. And it says after that, her thighs were slick with blood. So we see that she's being beaten at this particular time by her brother in this dream. And then she's saved by Jon Snow, which is the dragon. Now, when she sees Jon Snow, her savior, all of a sudden, she's afraid of him. This is the most fear she's ever felt in her life. Why should she be afraid of the love of her life? But she is. And the second time she dreamt the dragon dream, it says, its scales were black as night, wet and slick with blood, her blood. And that is because the scales is really armor. Jon Snow's Valyrian steel armor. That's why it's as black as night. And it's slick with her blood because he just stabbed her. Now, his eyes was molten magna. Just like we seen the Night King's eyes turn blue, we're going to see Jon Snow's eyes turned red when he sticks her with the sword. And it says she could hear it singing to her. And that is a reference to the Song of Ice and Fire, what the whole thing is about. Then it says she opened her arms to the fire and embraced it. Right then, she allows it to happen. She realizes what's happening. She was afraid at first, but she understands at this particular time why he's exactly doing it. And she's not afraid anymore. And when she does that, the pain goes away. Because she is now become one with the sword. That's why it says she feels strong, new, and fierce. That's why it says that it cleansed her and tempered her and scored her. Just what happens to a sword. And Nissa Nissa, we know her soul went inside of the sword to cause it to become a Lightbringer. That's exactly what's happening right now. Daenerys died, but she feels better because she is now a part of the sword. So if we break it on down, it seems that Daenerys Targaryen will not sit the Iron Throne, but Jon Snow will defeat the White Walkers. In order for him to defeat the White Walkers, he's going to have to kill Daenerys Targaryen to forge Lightbringer, and that's going to be the bittersweet ending. But we do have a caveat that's in there, a child. It will not be the end of the Targaryen line because their child will survive when this is all said and done. Now, will they both live or will they both die? I believe that Jon Snow will die in that battle. That will make it bitter, that he will not be able to see his child grow up. And it's possible that Daenerys Targaryen does survive in the end. But as we said before, I don't think she's going to get the Iron Throne, so therefore I can't see her surviving without being on the Iron Throne. But if you want to know how she can survive, check out this video, Daenerys ending Nobody Saw Coming, And in that video, I could tell you exactly how I could see Daenerys Targaryen surviving. But if she does die, which I think is most likely the case, I think her joy will be seeing her child born and knowing that the Targaryen line will survive, even though her and Jon Snow are no longer alive. But you tell me what you think in the comment section. Peace and stay sexy.